audience that's remote like me could hear
Yes.
either.
Introduction.
Okay, so welcome everyone. My name's Erin Chute. I'm the Commissioner of Public Works in Brookline, and I'm so excited to welcome you this evening to start really digging into what will be a conceptual plan and ultimately engineering bid documents for the Beacon Street Bridle Path. So we have an incredible team from the town, from our consultants, and also all of you, the public, and various boards and commissions. So many people that are going to be able to weigh in and I think really create a concept and design that's remarkable for the town. So I look forward to being part of the process. Thank you.
All right, excellent. Is Kevin on this?
I don't see him on the list here.
Okay. All right, and for the town, I just want to say a couple of things about these two. We have a tremendous amount of institutional knowledge helping with the town. Between Bill and Dan, I think they've got over 40 years. I didn't want to give an exact number.
Yeah.
But they've been doing unbelievable work for the past 6 months, working with the MBTA and all the station coordination. So it's great. So Bill, go ahead.
My name is Bill Smith. I'm a construction project coordinator with the Department of Public Works in the Engineering and Transportation Division. I'm an architect and have been with the town since 1996, and in fact, was helped to spearhead the initial project advisory committee, or PAC as it was called, for the 96 launch of the Beacon Street reconstruction design project. So I'm really excited to be a part of this second rethinking of at least the pedestrian and bicycle facilities along Beacon Street. And it was one item at which we'd looked back in 96, 97, the idea of recapturing Olmsted's Bridle Path as a shared use path down the median. But at the time, I don't think there was the appetite to address the impacts and all of that, and what would have been bicycle signals. That was rather new to the equation back in the late 90s. Right, thank you.
Oh, Dan.
And I'm Dan Martin. I'm transportation engineer here in DPW. Excited to move this project along. Been working on it for a number of years. Started with the feasibility study and the grassroots movement, helping get the information out, and looking forward to our first DRC meeting today.
Great. And meetings is up on that bits. We've got Tool Design who they did the feasibility study for us. So we're grateful to have all that knowledge brought forward as design. And I'll let you folks introduce yourselves.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Kathleen Ogden-Vassar. I'm a senior principal landscape architect at Tool Design and the project principal on this project.
Kathleen. Hi, everyone. My name is Preston Burer. I'm the engineering director for Tool Design's Boston office. Very excited to be here. First things I did when I moved to the region 20 years ago was run up and down Beacon Street. So excited to see this project forward, and I will be the project manager. I'll pass it to Jason DeGray, who's also with Tools.
Good evening, everyone. Jason DeGray. I am the regional operations director for Tool Design. Oversee all of our resources and staff in the Northeast. I'm a professional engineer and a former Brookline resident. I'm here tonight just, representing the firm's commitment to this incredible project. It's one obviously that I'm involved with for quite some time. And we're tremendously excited to be at the helm of the consultancy and to bring this project to realization. So it's a pleasure to be with you.
Okay, and finally I'll turn it over to Len and the designer for introductions.
Okay. So I'm Len Woolley. His last name's pronounced like Woolly Mammoth. It's spelled different. I'm the chair of the committee, and I look forward to working with you all.
I figured you'd go around with
Sure. I'm Eric Stone, representing the Shared Mobility Advisors, and avid cyclist here in Brooklyn.
Brian Ladd. I live on Beacon down near the far end and represent, I guess that end is as a resident.
Elton Elgren. I'm an architect. I'm on the Preservation Commission, and I ride my bike when I feel safe on it, which isn't often. So enthusiastic about this.
Nancy Moore, I'm one of the two liaisons from the Transportation Board along with Len. And I'm co-chair of this committee.
Hugh Madison, I'm on the tree planting committee and I am a town meeting member.
I think we're doing committee members now. Yeah, I think we want to get all of the committee members both here and on Zoom. Make sure we know who's on the committee.
I'm Clara Batchelor. I'm the chair of the Park and Recreation Commission and also a landscape architect.
I'm Rachel Swanson. I'm here as the Safe Routes to School representative. I've been the parent representative on Safe Routes to School for the Brock and Ridley School for like 4 or 5 years, and I live 1 block off of Beacon Street behind the Arcadian Hotel.
Steve Kimball from the community here in Blue Corner. I'm excited to be involved. I'm a brave and often reckless cycling commuter downtown, so I'm excited to contribute.
Hi, I'm Maurice Sapoznik. I'm the owner of the Olive Connection on Beacon Street, and I also live here in Brookline. I'm here to represent the Blue Corner Nursing Society, and look forward to seeing what's going to happen.
Jonathan Phillips. I'm representing the Pedestrian Advisory Committee. I live a couple blocks off Beacon Street and run on it and walk on it every day.
We do have some members online.
Jim Lee's here too. I'm representing the Brookline Commission on Disability.
Any other online members want to introduce themselves?
Ailish Gilligan here, owner of the Public House on Beacon Street in Washington Square. I also live in Washington Square and the chair of the Small Business Development Committee as well.
If anybody else who wants to introduce himself.
I think that is everyone that always are speaking. So yeah, we
Great. Thanks for going.
I think we'll short presentation.
Yeah. Tommy, do you want to say hello?
Sure.
Yeah.
I'm Tommy Patolo. I am Brookline State Representative. Project is not entirely in my district, but it does run through my district. I was on the Bicycle Advisory Committee when we advanced this idea. So that was about a decade ago, to give you some sense of how long these things take. And I was also able to secure the first earmark that paid for the study that would decide how much the study would cost. That earmark was secured by Jake Auchincloss. But the first one, that first little guy, I got that one to get this thing rolling.
Thank you. John Lynn Jones,
I'm Sean Lynn Jones. I'm president of the Brookline Green Space Alliance and also a town meeting member from Precinct 1 with a very strong interest in the whole Beacon Street corridor. Like Bill Smith, I was participating in the previous go round way back in the Pleistocene era when we last looked at Beacon Street. And speaking for the Brookline Green Space Alliance, this is a project we are very enthusiastic about and have been endorsing since it first came before town meeting.
Thank you. We have one more person in the room who hasn't said hello yet. Would you like to introduce yourself?
That's a hard cast to follow. I'm David Sipos. I live on Carlton Street. I'm a student and I bike here. Excited about the project.
Thank you for coming.
We could do the Zoom.
Yeah.
We have it if you want. I can do
swap over here.
Introduction.
Yeah, was there any other introductions you mentioned, Dan?
Should we introduce them else or just?
If they'd like to.
Are you, is this for just members of the general public attending?
How many people do we have in the audience?
Have about 18 people in the audience.
Keep going then.
Okay.
Let me share. Station line.
All right, so a little bit more about me. I'm the parent of 2 children who bike or walk to school. I'm a town meeting member in Precinct 11, member of the Transportation Board. And I wanted to share some background information about previous work related to the Bridle Path that I think is pretty interesting. But I think there's 2 main drivers for the Bridle Path and why we're here today. We have former town meeting member Jules Milner-Bragi and Brookline Select Board Sustainability and Climate Action Summit. So this is Joel's idea, the bridle path. Put in countless hours putting together a study, looking at all the details, what would need to be done to make it feasible. He put together events like the Envision Beacon Street 1 for a section of Beacon Street, and 2. I like the first one because you can almost see me in the picture with bright green pants. Probably not. But I think we have him to credit for why we're here today, for all the work he's done. And if you want to learn more about the history of this project, there's the link there to give you more information. All right, the second is Brookline Select Board Sustainability and Climate Action Summit, June 5th, 2019. This was held at the Ridley School, and it brought together residents, town officials, businesses, students, and organizations to generate ideas for the town to be able to achieve its climate goals. And some of those goals were transportation related. And at the following town meeting, Warrant Article 31 passed 191 yes, 1 no. And we set a goal for 2050 to have 75 to 25 sustainable transportation mode split, being 75% of the trips are human powered, electric micromobility or electric shared rides, and 25% of those are single occupant or single passenger electric cars and trucks. And we set a preliminary goal for 2030 where we want to try and get to the 2050 goal 30% of the way there by 2030, the end of this decade. But in order for us to realize those transportation goals, we need to address safety. A lot of the people who ride bikes here mentioned they don't necessarily feel safe riding on our streets in Brookline, and there's reason for that. There's over 1,000 car crashes in Brookline per year, with over 100 of those resulting in injury. 30% of those injured are either people riding a bike or walking. So we have a lot of work to be done, and I think the bridle path is one step in the right direction. Next slide. Car crashes occur in close proximity to school. There are a few instances where it's just terrifying what's happening on the streets. We can look to other countries as an example. France wants to be climate neutral by 2050. And they're taking action to realize that. In Paris, they've cut pollution in half, in large part due to their significant changes to their streets and infrastructure to encourage cycling. Okay, so I think Brookline is a place that sets goals and then achieves them. I think the Beacon Street Bridle Path will help us achieve our climate-related goals and also make kids safer and happier. I look forward to working with you.
Thank you, Len. Back to the
slide. Okay, next slide, Kristen.
Fix the audio there.
So let me speak briefly to the town of Brookline's project team. Of course, Beacon Street is a public way, the nation's first intentionally designed multimodal corridor, designed by the Olmsted firm in the 1880s, and went through a lengthy public process of takings and widening of an earlier 1851 county road. But for this project, Brookline DPW brings an amazing array of support at the staff level. We have architects, landscape architects, engineers of various sorts, arborists. It's really going to be a powerful support tool for the tool team and the public, because the staff will provide significant technical advice. I think we'll be facilitating a lot of the public outreach and really guiding the approval process through the different boards and commissions with jurisdictional interests along Beacon Street. Next slide, please. About the tool design team, we were very fortunate as was alluded to earlier, to be the recipient of a federal earmark at thanks to our legislative delegation at a $2 million level. This, in addition to a town match, allowed us to go out to in a public request for proposal process in which tool design and their subconsultant HNTB emerged as the clear strong winner, and we were able to award the design contract to the team. So we really look forward to working with Tool, who has a national reputation for exploring alternative transportation modes, specifically bicycle and ped, in all sorts of conditions and contexts. Next slide, please. And this recognizes the role of the design review committee, in which the majority of you all participate. You represent an amazing diversity of stakeholders along the Beacon Street corridor, some residential, some business, some modes of transportation. And it was carefully crafted so that we, through the design process, get an array of perspectives. And that will really contribute to an acceptable and phenomenal shape for the bridle path. Next slide, please. Then I just want to emphasize the importance of public input. Each of our design review committee meetings will be open to the public. They largely will be hybrid, so they'll not only be the opportunity to attend in person, but attend remotely if that be necessary. And at each meeting, we'll have a public input or public comment portion, either at the end or strategically placed if there were a discussion within the context of the presentation. No, next slide. No, that's fine. Then I just want to say, over the past several months, staff and Tool have been intensely engaged with Mass DOT through their project review committee to gain acceptance of the Bridle Path project as a transportation improvement project in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. What this will ultimately do, we hope, is provide much needed construction funding for this project. So we're now in that universe, and Mass DOT Highway is the agency that facilitates the TIP process, and will be now, together with the design review committee, working to develop what is called a 25% level plan set. So plan specifications and a cost estimate developed to a 25% level that is submitted to Mass DOT for their review and approval. We'll have an opportunity to reply. The result of that is a design public process that Mass DOT will hold in Town Hall and invite the public. And in preparation for that, of course, public support is key. They don't want to hear, and they hope that the town has worked through any issues by that point at the design public process. So it will be important for us to have worked through the jurisdictional boards and commissions relevant on Beacon Street, such as some mentioned here, the Tree Planning Committee, there's the Preservation Commission, there of course is the Transportation Board, and then ultimately the Select Board. Next slide. We'll turn this over to my colleague, Dan Martin.
Sure. So the feasibility study, it was finished in 2020. And since then, we've had a lot of new inputs that have come in. So the MBTA station accessibility improvements, they're widening 7 of the platforms. to make it accessible and easier for train riders. So that's something we're considering now. And right now, there's also a survey. So all of Beacon Street is being surveyed: utilities, curb line, trees. We're also gathering parking data, traffic movements, parking utilization, and all that is going to be used to help come up with a design for this project. And then on the next slide, I wanted to talk about the overview and the feasibility study. So a lot of this was already covered earlier, but it did begin quite a while ago. 2018, there was the town meeting warrant article, which was the non-binding resolution that called for the feasibility study on Beacon Street. And this is really led from grassroots movement. And Jules Milner, who's in the audience here, he used to be a Brookline resident. He championed this effort. He had since moved, but as you can see, he's still very interested in the project. And then in fall 2020, the feasibility study looked at a number of options, and it took into its work looking at data, traffic volumes, stakeholder engagement, coordination with the MBTA, and then there was broad participation with town departments, advisory committees, boards, business representatives, and community advocacy groups. And then a series of virtual stakeholder meetings. This was during COVID, so everything we did was online. And those stakeholder meetings, they looked at a number of different options for Beacon Street to accommodate bikes and make it safer for all users. And the feasibility study ultimately chose the shared use path down the middle as the best option. And now we're advancing that, and I'll turn it over to Tool and Preston to work on where we are now.
Thank you, Dan. Appreciate it. And I want to reiterate how excited we are to be here today. This is a transformative project, and we've been working on it for quite a long time already. Really just so thrilled to be here and to be kicking this off. So as Dan went through, there's some key information. I want to do some sharing of information that we're all starting from a common baseline and some expectation setting, so that this team understands the work that has been done and the work that is to come, both in the immediate future and on a longer time horizon. So with that in mind, I'm going to start with the feasibility study, recap some information from that, talk a little bit about existing conditions. Dan mentioned some new projects that will change our existing conditions, and then move on to the design process and the engagement process that is to come. So starting with the feasibility study, we're going to look at a couple of cross sections from that. This comes directly from that study, and this is typically Beacon Street today. I think we're all very familiar with it, but again, just to make sure we're all operating from the same frame of reference. We have Beacon Street starting left to right here. On the left side, sidewalks, generously wide sidewalks, with a beautiful tree canopy along quite a bit of the sidewalk, parking in 2 travel lanes along the narrow side of the roadway. And then there's the center median, which is going to be the focus of our effort moving forward. That median includes the Green Line reservation, often buffered by those Olmsted tree canopy on both sides. And then frequently on the wide side of the median, as we're calling it, there's angle parking in an access aisle, sometimes with concrete rumble strip buffer. Basically, there's a lot of space in the median between the MBTA tracks and the vehicle travel lanes. There's 2 more vehicle travel lanes. Frequently on the wide side of Beacon Street, there is a bike facility, unprotected next to parking, and then of course the sidewalks on the other side of the street. As Dan mentioned, the feasibility study evaluated several alternatives and came to a preferred option for the Bridle path. This preferred alternative, in general terms, uses the wide side of the median to put in a shared use path and an additional buffer between the shared use path and whatever goes to the right of that on screen. As you can see here, the preferred alternative maintains the possibility to retain the angle parking that is in the median. We'll talk a little bit more about this in a few slides. And it maintains the 2 travel lanes on the right side of Beacon Street there. And so what does that look like along the entire length of the corridor? The feasibility study came to this concept plan. And I'm going to walk through the entire plan here in relatively quick fashion. It is online, it is available for everyone, and it is unchanged since this was published in 2021. But again, this will be our common frame of reference to start. So this section that you see on screen here starts at the west end of the project limits over Air Road, right at the town line, and runs almost all the way up to Washington Square. On the right is a key plan, so you can see the part of the corridor that we're talking about. You can see that we're breaking the corridor up into 3 sections to talk about tonight that will also mirror how we are approaching the public engagement that is forthcoming shortly. So a few things that I want to focus on while we have the concept plan on the screen. The feasibility study was just that. It determined the feasibility of this project. It did not tackle nuanced design decisions. It identified many things that we have to consider, but it did not make concrete decisions about the nuances of design, aside from selecting that preferred alternative. So when we think about things that are important along this corridor, things like trees, you can see the concept plan here does not detail anything in terms of where trees are, where trees might go, what might be impacted, what may be opportunities. That's in the cross section that is in the feasibility study report itself, but the concept plan doesn't get to that level. That's our charge here. That is what we get to grapple with. And we'll be collecting all of the necessary data and talking about the design in those terms moving forward. Somewhat similarly, the angle parking that's in the median. The study shows several different options for angle parking or for parking configurations, whether that's maintaining the angle, changing it to back in, parallel parking. We are collecting the data to make those decisions on a block by block level as part of this design process. Stepping through the corridor here, this section you'll see contains both Washington Square and Coolidge Corner. As we have cut the plan here, we know those are going to be our most challenging areas. I mentioned the path goes on the wide side of the median. The wide side of the median is determined by the MBTA tracks. Those tracks shift from one side to the other at Washington Square and Coolidge Corner. So those are our areas where we know we're going to have to play around with some interaction between the path, the trolley, traffic. There's going to be a lot going on. So just want to acknowledge that those are going to be real focus areas for us, certainly early on, as well as throughout the life of this project. Continuing to walk through here to the eastern section of the corridor. I will note this is the first section of the corridor that we are going to be hosting a public talk and walk event at this month. We'll talk a little bit more about those in the future, but just want to flag that this is where we will be starting with the broader public discussion. A couple of other things that I want to flag here that we know we're going to need to consider, but again, aren't necessarily represented on this concept plan yet. We know we're going to need to think closely about access to the path, what those access points look like, where they are, what the treatments are that get people to and from this facility. We know we're going to need to think about pedestrian scale lighting to ensure this path is safe, welcoming, and just a wonderful environment at all times of day. We know there's quite a lot of utilities in the median that we're going to have to consider. There's a few other things that I'll touch on in a little bit in terms of existing conditions, but really want to emphasize this as our starting point, a wonderful starting point, but just that it is what we get to build upon here. So take a moment to just acknowledge that the feasibility study again looked closer at some of these challenge areas. So Coolidge Corner here, I think perhaps the most prescient thing from this image is just above and to the right of the Harvard Street intersection. Those 2 westbound travel lanes where the path is. This is the tightest spot on the corridor. This is going to be incredibly challenging area for us to deal with. We recognize that. We're excited to find solutions. But when we think about some of the things we're going to have to tackle early on and discuss, this is going to be one of them. Continuing along to Washington Square, the other area where the path is going to have to interact with that MBTA reservation, switch back to the other side of the median. This is an area that's going to have some complex traffic operations. Also, Washington Street recently, since this feasibility study, there's the initiation of the Washington Street project. It's another condition that we're going to have to think about as we move forward here. So really two very exciting areas. These are vibrant commercial hubs. We really want to tie the path into them, but areas that we're going to have to think about from the get-go. And continuing along, I think this is the last section I have on the feasibility study itself. The feasibility study really took to heart the Olmsted vision for this corridor, the green corridor it is, the multimodal corridor with this beautiful tree canopy, historic tree canopy that exists. And it proposes quite a few different ideas that could be considered, both to reflect that historic nature, that existing tree canopy, but also to be forward thinking in terms of how we deal with climate change, what the strategies are that could be implemented along the corridor. So it gives us a lot of things to consider as we move forward and collect more data. So I'm going to move now to the Sea Branch project. And my goal here is not to re-say everything that the MBTA has already presented to the select board, but I do want to bring this up in the context of the Bridle Path project. Bill mentioned we've been in contact with the MBTA. We've been working with them for quite some time. Before this design project even initiated, the town has been working closely with the MBTA to ensure that these two projects that are very important in their own rights can coexist and improve conditions out on Beacon Street. So again, I'm going to touch very briefly on a few things that we want to be mindful of as the MBTA comes into their station project. One of which is the access points. We know that the MBTA will be evaluating access points to and from their stations. In some cases, adding new access points where required to provide two means of egress from their stations. So it's something we're going to be in very close, have been and will be in very close contact with the team to continue understanding such that we are able to connect to those critical points and plan ahead for them. We also understand that the MBTA's project will have some effects to the on-street parking, whether that be the median angle parking or the curbside parking. Throughout this project, we will be clearly tracking the impacts on a block level basis of this project. So block by block, we will be able to speak to what is out there today. The MBTA is accounting for their impact, and we will have clear diagrams and information on what our potential impact is. And lastly, trees. The MBTA will unfortunately impact some trees along the corridor. I think one of the really positives that we've seen from our work with the MBTA has been the ability to get tree lawns put in with their stations, providing an opportunity to start to replenish canopy, grow new canopy in an area that the Bridle Path project will not have to disturb. So we will be able to start improving that canopy, replacing canopy where needed in a fashion that won't disrupt the Bridle Path project that has really been pre-planned for. So with that, I want to transition to talking a little bit about the scope, both of this design team, that again, we're very happy to be here today. So talk a little bit about what's on our plates and then talk about the scope of the project more broadly. So in terms of the tool and HNTB team that Bill mentioned the town was able to retain, we have been under contract for the majority of this year. We have started project initiation with Mass DOT to ensure that this process is moving. We have started gathering a lot of existing conditions data. I'm going to talk about some of that in more detail in just a second. We are starting our public engagement process in the moment, and really will be off to a full-throated start throughout the month of October. We will be shepherding this project through the Mass DOT design process, ensuring that we are checking all of those boxes, making sure that there is, we're not being caught off guard by some DOT requirement that's going to hold us back, identifying things proactively and moving this project forward. We're also coordinating, again, very closely with the MBTA, not just on the stations, but also to ensure that what we proposed, part of the Bridle Path project, works for the MBTA. It's not something that, again, we're going to run into barriers somewhere down the road. It is our responsibility to proactively coordinate. As Bill mentioned, plans, specifications, estimates, those engineering documents, those engineering materials are primary charge here. And we are scoped to take those, picking them up from the concept that exists and taking them through detailed design. At this point, we are under contract through 75% design, which is the point at which you start to really have the details of the project pulled together in full. Talking a little bit about the project itself, we are talking about the entirety of Beacon Street within town limits. So that is Air Road on the west and St. Mary's Street on the east. Full stop. It is all of Beacon Street within town limits along that center median. And so, yeah, when we talk about this, our primary project area that we are considering here is that median. This is where, as we saw before, the bridle path goes in. It allows us to add that facility and consider what the additional space within the wide side of the median can be used for. Of note, we are always staying to that wide side of the median. Part of what the feasibility study looked at in terms of holistically, where do different transportation facilities go on the corridor? The preferred alternative from the feasibility study was the shared use path on the wide side of the median. So looking a little bit more closely, this is a zoom in to that concept plan I had up before. And I think this will be helpful in setting expectations for that project limit. The red dashed outline here are the project extents. Right? So we're looking at the median from the MBTA tracks to the vehicle traveled way. That's the area that we are playing with for this path. And critically, we are also including all of the crossings to and from the path on both sides of the street. So we want to get this facility in, and we recognize the critical need to make those connections as well. Outside of that area, Mass DOT has committed to a mill and overlay of all of Beacon Street to go with this project. So that's the dashed outline that you see there in blue. For some eagle-eyed viewers, I recognize it's a little faint, but there's a black dashed outline as well. That's the extent of our topographic survey. So when we're collecting existing conditions data about what's out there on the street now, we'll go a little bit past Beacon Street in all directions to make sure we have the information necessary to design the project. Let's talk a little bit about those existing conditions and start with the trees, right? Beautiful tree canopy. We recognize that this is an incredibly critical component of the street and a very historic component of the street. So when we think about trees, we're going to be thinking about them both in that canopy sense as well as in an individual sense. And so we are starting with the tree inventory that the town is maintaining. The MBTA, as we've seen, has collected some additional tree inventory data. We will be taking in this data as the project moves along to ensure that we can speak accurately to the opportunities and impacts that may come with certain design choices. This data that you see on screen, the snippet on the right, that's a clip of a much larger role plan that will be presented at all three of our public meetings. So there'll be the opportunity to really investigate what data we have on the existing trees that are in the median at our upcoming public events. Similarly, the parking along Beacon Street is another area where we've been collecting data to ensure we have a rock solid foundation to start our design process. The town completed an inventory of all parking spaces along Beacon Street, all on-street parking, I should say. That includes both the parallel curbside parking on the north and south side of the street, as well as all of the parking in the median, whether that be angled or parallel. In total, 1,264 spaces on Beacon Street. We have also collected utilization data of that parking in fall of this year, actually within the past month or so. That utilization data is broken up by the north curbside, north parallel parking, the median parking, the south parking. It's broken up block by time of day, weekday and weekends, and you can see again on screen a portion of that data. We have a lot of ground to cover today, so I'm not diving into all the data, but it will all be available. And again, we will track this and speak accurately and clearly to it throughout the project. We have also collected a significant amount of operational data. So say operational data, what do I mean? Collected counts at 20 intersections along the corridor. So that's counts of how many vehicles, how many bicycles, how many pedestrians go through each intersection, broken up in 15-minute chunks throughout the day. Collected 6 corridor counts. So that's vehicles traveling along Beacon Street, including bicycles. So we have those volumes and speeds at several locations. And for the crosswalks that are not near an intersection, we wanted to make sure we counted those too. So we got pedestrian and bicycle counts for everyone using those crosswalks that are out there today, even if they're away from a signal. And on the right, you can see some of the high level takeaways from that data. Beacon Street is quite long, 2.25 miles here. So obviously it varies quite a bit throughout the corridor, but wanted to give some framing in terms of what we see out there. Traffic can range from about 14,000 to 21,000 vehicles a day. The 85th percentile speed, this is sort of the speed at which most people are traveling at or under, is 23 to 33 miles an hour. It's quite a spread. There are anywhere from 170 to over 2,000 pedestrians and bicyclists using crosswalks along Beacon Street every day. So it's 2,000 people in a single crosswalk per day. At some intersections, we see upwards of 2,700 pedestrians crossing all the crosswalks within 1 hour alone. So we know we see some incredible usage out there by all modes of transportation. And our counts, which I will say were collected in winter and early spring, also had over 50 bicyclists per hour in the peak direction. So despite the fact that there are not consistent bike facilities and that these counts were taken colder time of year, we still see significant bicycle use on the corridor. Talking a little bit about the remaining existing conditions elements that we want to hit on today. As was mentioned before, this is a historic district. We recognize the character of the corridor. That character is incredibly important in the design that we come to here. In terms of existing median facilities, you can see on the bottom left, there's not a consistent sidewalk along it. A lot of times there are goat paths in the medians. There's also utilities throughout the median, light poles in the parking areas, electrical cabinets, EV charging. There's a lot going on there that we're going to need to think about in terms of what we need to move around or what might need to move for the path. There's going to be competition for space, some mixing zones, right? We know these crossings, these commercial areas, these places people love to be. There's going to be a lot of people. And so we're going to need to think thoughtfully about how all those people interact with each other. And of course, the middle section of the corridor on the top right, we have steep slopes, that embankment between the upper and lower portions of Beacon Street. So it's quite a lot to consider. How do we consider it? And I'll keep our wits about us and talk intelligibly between the design team and DRC, between us, the public. This is where our thinking has been recently. And this is how we have started our design process. And I think I might actually use this opportunity to throw it over to Kathleen to walk through what we're thinking for these design topics.
Thanks, Preston. And to give Preston a break because he just covered a lot of information. Thank you very much for doing that. I'm really ending the presentation here. Just wanted to jump in and sort of frame everything that you've heard. As some of you have been a part of even just the MBTA station design presentations, anything along Beacon Street is a lot to cover. We have very briefly summarized not just our scope, but the existing conditions and our roles and what we have to think about at this presentation tonight alone. Very brief. We know it's going to be complicated, and we really thought, made sure we thought through how to have these conversations, not just with you all as a design review committee, but also with the public. How can we take, move everything down to bite-sized pieces and focus everyone's attention on certain topics along the way. So we've identified 4 themes, and you will see these at the meetings when we come back to you and have these discussions. So the first one is the path. And this is go to talk specifically about the shared use path width, its level of service, the cross-sectional placement of the path within that envelope that Preston had been describing, the buffers between the path and the train and the path and the road or parking, different user groups of the path, and accessibility for sure. The second theme is access and parking. This is really critical. It's not going to make any difference what we design. No one can get there safely or from there to where they're heading. So this really will focus our conversations about path access points and desire lines, road crossings, the track crossings, as Preston mentioned, making sure our access to station platforms continues to be clear, and from the parking to those stations, as well as to the intersections, and parking itself. As Preston mentioned, we fully intend and move forward with complete transparency about what the actual effects of the bridle path may have on parking in the median. Landscape and infrastructure is the third one. We really think about this in terms of the corridor as a system. As you know, we've talked about this as a greenway and expanding the urban forestry and the connectivity of this bridle path can bring. So this is where we're going to be talking about trees and planting, drainage, utilities, lighting, stormwater management, hopefully green stormwater management, and climate resilience, because we know the site and the landscape and trees are a huge part of climate resilience. The last theme is the experience. And this is where we will really focus on factors that influence and shape the experience that people will have when they're on the path itself. What is the identity? What's the character? What do the gateways look like? Gathering spaces, how we bring in historic elements, what materials we'll use, site furnishings, as well as wayfinding, which is really important. We see not just as signage, but as spatial recognition to guide ways for people wayfinding. We leave you with this because this is what's ahead of us. There's a lot to discuss, and we're really excited to talk about it in the weeks and months and years ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Kathleen. Certainly appreciate that summary and the chance to grab a sip of water. Okay, so yeah, as Kathleen said, this is where we leave things in terms of the design process. I'm going to take us through a little bit of the schedule now, and then we can move to open discussion and opportunity for some questions and answers. So moving us on to the schedule, again, just taking a quick view at the work that's been done, acknowledging the start that predates this design team, this specific design review committee, the fantastic work that laid the foundation for everything that was here today. More recently, we have initiated the project with Mass DOT, as Bill mentioned. This team has been taking in all of the planning documents, the townwide, the region-wide planning documents that will inform this design process. We have collected traffic data that I mentioned. We are collecting crash data. Len shared some data. We are looking at a quite comprehensive data collection program for the crash data. The internal design workshops, that's how we came to this framing of design ideas. That's what we've been focused on. How do we talk about the project? How do we frame our design ideas? We've not started the design yet. And then the parking study, which, as I mentioned, the inventory and data that was collected. Things that are ongoing at the moment, that crash data collection, quite a comprehensive program. We're working with Mass DOT to establish exactly what timeframes are needed there. They have a very rigorous process for that. We have our ongoing topographic survey. So this is our creating a base map for ourselves that includes everything that's out on the street today. Every sign, every curb, every sidewalk, every stripe line, that is ongoing, and we hope to have that wrapped up by December. MBTA coordination ongoing, has been for some time. Again, public outreach, we are starting today, and we'll have this ongoing moving forward. And of course, the same can be said for the DRC coordination. On the front of public outreach specifically, we have our first set of public engagement opportunities coming up this month. They're on a roughly weekly cadence starting next week. So we are hosting a series of 3 talk and walk events. These events will have a half-hour opportunity at the beginning for folks to convene and walk out briefly to a spot in the corridor and to take in Beacon Street and sort of have some informal discourse with the project team on Beacon Street for about half an hour. And then from 5:30 to 7:30, there will be an open forum at the locations listed here with stations to take in project introduction and project existing conditions. A lot of the information you just saw here in a bigger, richer format, as well as to dive into those key themes that Kathleen just discussed. We're going to have stations set up for each of those to really share out to the public the data that we have as a starting point, precedents that we have, and take in from them what are design priorities, what are reactions to those precedents, to the data that's out there. So we'll do that 3 times. As I mentioned earlier, it's broken up into 3 sections of the corridor. The first section being the St. Mary's neighborhood. So that'll go from St. Mary's Street to Coolidge Corner, including Coolidge Corner. The second one will be from Coolidge Corner to Washington Square, inclusive of both of those. And the last one will be from Washington Square all the way over to Air Road. So it gives us 3 opportunities to focus on different neighborhoods. It gives us 2 touch points for those key commercial areas, those very busy, those very challenging areas. And it also gives 3 opportunities for folks to interact with the project. So, if someone really can't make the October 16th date, but they have something they want to say about the St. Mary's neighborhood, we will of course welcome that feedback at the Coolidge Corner meeting or the Washington Square meeting. But as Kathleen was mentioning, we're providing some framing around this to help make the information digestible and clear. So that's why we have it broken up into 3 corridors. Those times, those locations are on there. Generally speaking, they all start at 5 p.m. for the sidewalk portion. And at 5:30 p.m., the open forum indoors portion begins with all of the stations. In terms of expectation setting for this group, more specifically, looking ahead, we have a few more things, those ongoing efforts and a couple of upcoming efforts in the Mass DOT process before we get to the early design process. But that is where we want to start convening next, is that design initiation process. So the next time we meet we are expecting to dive into some of those early design topics, the path level of service, those challenging rail crossing areas, Coolidge Corner, Washington Square, really opening a dialogue on what are the ideas, what are the considerations, what are the constraints that are going to ground the fundamental aspects of this project and the most challenging aspects of the project, and stepping forward from there with, at that point, direction from the community, offering conditions data, direction, collaboration with the DRC. We'll be able to begin drafting the role plan and engaging more broadly in additional focus areas. And so in terms of schedule for those, we anticipate this being a winter into early spring push. Again, the next slide gets into some remaining schedule items that are driving this. And because of some of those remaining schedule items, there is a little bit of uncertainty in when the next meeting date will be. We have a road safety audit with Mass DOT that will take some time to schedule. So we want to put a couple of dates out on the calendar as potentials. And we would ask if this group is able to hold those dates. We certainly can discuss this in the Q&A session as well if there's additional need. But broadly speaking, what we have here represents the fourth Thursday of every. That's correct. Yes, fourth Thursday of every. As was mentioned before, this hybrid virtual format is what we anticipate moving forward. I certainly value the opportunity to interact with all of you in person to the extent that it's feasible and practical for you all, but really appreciate that everyone came out today, as well as everyone that joined online. I appreciate you all taking your time. I think we find a lot of value in this. So we see these meetings continuing forward in a similar fashion. And talking about those remaining items to get us through to that early design process. We have a road safety audit that we will be scheduling with Mass DOT. This requires assembling an incredibly long list of state and town officials. That is our schedule uncertainty at the moment. It's going to take us some time to pull together that list with the finalized crash data for a meeting. On the positive side, because of the lead time associated with that road safety audit, we do anticipate being able to give weeks, if not months of notice on those potential design review committee dates. So again, would ask if the team is able to hold those, that would be greatly appreciated. We will give generous advance notice on the next DRC meeting date. And that is just about everything we have today. We didn't do too bad in terms of time there. So yeah, I would be happy to turn this back. Glenn, I don't know if you wanted to kick things off with any comment or facilitate a question and answer session.
That was great. Thank you, Preston. Thank you, Kathleen. Very detailed and thorough, and we have a lot of work ahead of us, it seems. I don't have any questions at this point. Does anyone else have questions? Nathan?
Yes, I have lots of questions, but I'll try to keep them short to make sure everybody gets an opportunity. My first question is, I don't have a sense of what it means to say 10% design, 25% design. Could you give a very quick, sort of idea of what that means?
Sure.
Like what decisions have to be made, I just have no sense of what that means.
Mm-hmm. Sure, I'd be happy to. So 10% design is really the first point at which we have a detailed or a layout of the full corridor. So the concept plan that was on screen earlier, right? That was the entire corridor laid out in plan view. 10% design provides us the opportunity to do that with more detail of the intended plan, as well as more existing conditions detail. So at that point, Kathleen mentioned level of service for the path. How wide is the path, right? We want to be thinking about that. What are our critical access points? A lot of those big broad decisions are made at the 10% level. Once we start to move past that, the 25% level is when things need to be a little more thought through in terms of detail. We need to sort of be placing all of our smaller elements along the path with some level of certainty about where they're going to go. There may still be some iteration from there, but at 25% design, it's the point at which we can say with some confidence, this is what we anticipate things to look like. 75% and beyond is where you figure out how high the curve's going to be, figure out all the minute grading details, all the minutia of it. So really 10% and then 25 are where the majority of the decisions are made.
I would just add to that, that those are, Mass DOT has those specific submittals, right? So that's very formulaic for Mass DOT. You know, these are the ones you have to do. They have a certain bar, like a certain set of drawings that must be submitted and documents and formed for each one of those. That will as a design team will be required to put together and submit. On a more specific note, as far as tool design and how we approach things, 25% usually is not all that robust. We have found, however, it's really important to make sure that we are looking at all of the data in clear enough form and really asking all the hard questions to make sure we've identified as well as we can everything that we need to address at the 25% level. We don't want to have surprises when we get into 75%. At that point, we want to be developing the technical drawings to build the project, right? We don't want to be answering concept approaches to, you know, the design or things of that nature. So the 25% is a really important key moment before moving on to just developing technical documents.
My second question, and I'll end with this one, and I'm not sure how much this is for you or how much this is for the town staff, is certainly between now and the end of the year, I'm wondering about public participation and notification. Most people I know in town have no idea what's going on. You know, they don't know about this meeting. They don't know about, you know, opportunities for neighborhood input, et cetera. So a couple of things, the meetings that you have scheduled, the neighborhoods, first of all, based on what information is going out, I don't think anyone from St. Mary's would understand that it's okay to go to a different meeting and raise questions about St. Mary's. I think they would think that if they can't go on the 16th, they've lost their opportunity. More importantly, I think we need more opportunity for people to access this information online, you know, Zoom meetings, because a lot of people cannot attend in person on those times, you know, at that time. And I don't see anything scheduled. I mean, we don't have any more meetings, so they, you know, if they know about it, they could, you know, participate by Zoom in these meetings, but we're not going to meet again until January. So that leaves 6 months where there's a big opportunity to let people know what's going on. And I'm wondering if we can figure out ways to have some of these repeat these introductory meetings, at least to get people aware of the project and understand how they can participate. And maybe Dan, that's really more for town staff to figure out ways to do this. I just think that you've got a lot of time here between now and January where it would be really useful to get people aware of the project and get more people, you know, sitting in on the committee meetings, you know, at home by Zoom and learning more about the project. Because I've seen this in the transportation board all the time, is the staff spends an amazing amount of time on a particular project. People don't know about it, they don't pay attention, they're not hearing, they show up at the meeting and it turns out that, you know, people are very upset. They don't like the project. It would have been better to know that earlier. And so if we could figure out ways to get people involved, particularly in the sense of by Zoom and not having to show up in person. And that's really more of a comment.
And did you send this meeting information to the town meeting?
Yeah, so for advertising, it was sent to all the abutters on Beacon Street, got a mailer that had the information for the DRC meeting tonight, and it has the open houses to the different neighborhoods. It was sent on the town meeting listserv. It was sent on people that are subscribed to the transportation board, to the clerk, and also people that subscribe to this DRC committee page. And then there's yard signs being placed on Beacon Street. I think those are going up tomorrow. And then we have.
Yeah, I placed 4 on my way out here
Yeah.
today. We already placed a few earlier in the week.
So you'll see them out and about throughout town already.
Yeah, I think there's ways that we could brainstorm, not necessarily tonight.
Yeah.
But we could brainstorm about additional ideas. Perfectly honest, I'm in precinct 1. I don't hear from my town meeting members. You know, Paul Warren used to, send around these emails all the time that he's in a town meeting. So I don't hear from my town meeting members. They know it. They're not telling me. They're not telling my neighbors. So maybe we can encourage town meeting members to be more active, proactive in, affirmatively communicating. I don't know how many of them have email addresses for their constituents that they could just send out emails, it would be very nice to hear.
Yeah, good feedback. And we can definitely consider turnout if we need to have a virtual option after the neighbor talking walks too.
And and to be clear about that, these are open forums with information that everything that will be at those will be posted. And any questions or activities we have at that will be available as in survey form online. So there'll be nothing that was out there in person that will not be online ultimately.
Thank you.
Sure, thank you.
Yeah, a quick question. Will the neighborhood meetings be on Zoom?
No, those are open forums.
Zoom is real handy.
It's not a meeting.
Yeah.
It's just an open forum so people can learn. We're gonna cover much of what we covered tonight.
Sure.
Yeah, so it's not, we're not making presentations on design, it's sharing of information, it's listening. So that same information will be shared and this listening part will be the survey form online afterwards.
Point out a lot of the people, they'll say, don't say Mary's, oh, I'll attend that, they won't attend the others. But when I say attend, I mean, Zoom is the way to go. Ain't nothing. In my way of thinking.
I think we're hearing a lot of Nancy, a few of the need for more hybrid or solely virtual format. So let's see how we might restructure a walk and talk, if probably not walk, but into a hybrid format that could be offered, because there is time to do that before the next DRC meeting, for example.
Yeah.
Because it is a gap due to some
Even if it's just
requirements.
repeating this info, because this was incredibly useful and helpful, and if people just knew that much, just as many opportunities there are to inform as many people as possible of just what you said to me.
Yeah, and that's the whole purpose of these, is to get everyone reinitiated into what we're doing. Yeah, I think it's a great input.
Do we have a presentation component to the talks apart from the workshop?
About 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Hi, this is who we are.
High level.
Type of thing. Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Because the board speak that what we just did. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that input for virtual is appreciated. And it goes hand in hand, right, with folks that want to come out and stand along the corridor. So I think it is part of our mission, right, in doing this both hybrid and in person today, to really facilitate engagement from everyone, however they need that to happen.
Elton?
Got a question and a comment. The question is, do you plan or have the capability of using computer modeling to model the flow of pedestrians and bikes, and maybe even traffic in these areas that are particularly difficult to design? I mean, I've been involved with large complicated projects in the past where we've relied on pedestrian flow modeling to determine level of service. So
We absolutely will be using the traffic simulation modeling software, I should say, to determine, what our operations needs for this project are.
good. The comment is, I question why we're looking at a pedestrian bicycle mixed path. Why not just bicycles? If the principal goal is to get people out of cars and onto bikes as a serious mode of transportation, and we already have two beautiful sidewalks on Beacon Street, what's the point of creating the danger and the slowing down that you get when you mix bicycles and pedestrians? In Copenhagen, Amsterdam, French cities, I don't think they would do that where they have a high density corridor.
So the feasibility study looked at those alternatives, and it was determined through that process that it would be a shared use path. Some of the advantages of doing it as a shared use path as opposed to just bike lanes or a bike way is that you are accommodating another alternative mode of transportation, active transportation, which is walking. And those who don't own bicycles and, their means of egress is to walk or roll in some other way. Additionally, the parking and access to the T stations do not have any sidewalks currently. There's no safe mode to get from a parking space to those stations. So the bridle path will allow that to happen, and it'll allow that to happen not just from the parking right there, but from, the nearest corner that you're coming from to walk along the bridle path. I think the last not insignificant thing is that the original vision for Beacon Street included a bridle way, the actual design. The design of the whole cross section of the street was about multimodal movement along the corridor. It literally designed location for cars, location for people to stroll, location for the bridleway, and location for the on-street trolley. This center running median shared use path brings back that true multimodal connection and center running space, green space that was originally envisioned. So I think there's also that.
Actually, before we go next, there is a question in the chat that piggybacks off this. If you could go to that really quick. I'm wondering if there will be traffic signals for bicycling in this newly proposed bridle path. Yes, the bridle path will include signals at the intersection. Again, to the point Kathleen was just enumerating, this path will be a shared use path. There will be signals for that path and crossings for that path at intersections.
Okay. Jonathan?
Yeah, just to piggyback on that comment. I do think that having the right of way be shared use is actually going to help from a pedestrian perspective, because if you're walking like storefront to storefront, you're probably going to be on the sidewalk. So it's really more of a throughway, and it is the Boston Marathon course, and a lot of people run on Beacon Street, and they'll be able to utilize that path so they won't be going too slow. And if you're walking, odds are you're walking through. And so hopefully it won't interfere with bicyclists too much from that perspective.
Tommy?
I would encourage who design in this committee to go for a walk on the Muddy River path, which is almost certainly wider than what you'll be able to build here. And take note of the roughly 14 signs that communicate that bicycling is inferior to walking on that space. It says explicitly, bikes yield to peds. Even if peds are walking 7 across, the bicyclist is expected to get off the path to yield to them. It communicates a design that pedestrians are at the highest part of the hierarchy, and then bicyclists at that location. In this location, I will tell you that the most experienced bicyclists will not be riding. It's going to be too congested. I'll be on the street. I'm not riding on the bridle path, because when's kids are going to be riding their bike on the bridle path? And they're wonderful kids, but they're going to be in my way, right? The problem becomes when three older adults discover that it's really pleasant to walk side by side by side down the bridle path. And people are coming in multiple directions at multiple speeds. And they're going to find these three wonderful older adults getting exercise and social activity and be doing something really healthy. And oh my gosh, are they going to be in the way? And so I encourage you to think really carefully about the expectation that you communicate through the design, through the signs, through all of the tools that you have at your disposal to help the users understand what the expected hierarchy is. Because there's no facility like what we're thinking the bridle path will be anywhere in Brookline. The closest might be the Esplanade, maybe, but even in the Esplanade, you can go path to the right if you're jogging, and you don't have intersections every 40 yards. So my concern is not at 6 a.m. when it's joggers and a couple of people riding early to work. My concern is on a beautiful fall afternoon when there's so many different kinds of users at so many different skill levels, and the path is narrow for that sort of use. And so like, I'm imagining this as the place where low-skilled users are, low-skilled bicyclists, kids, right? Low-skilled walkers. I don't even think like hardcore runners are going to use the bridle path because they're going to be frustrated by its narrowness, right? So be thinking about what you expect the different user groups, how you expect them to behave, and how you will communicate that expectation to them. I think that's part of it. The social part of it is actually really tricky.
So well put.
Yeah. And don't fall into the train tracks. Good grief, they're right there.
Absolutely well put. I would just add to this the path level of service, which we flagged as the next DRC meeting when we kick off the design, when we have not put pen to paper, we are kicking things off. This discussion is path level of service. That is where we expect to start. Absolutely.
To decide how wide the path is going to be or should be, what the recommended width is. Yes.
Somewhat similar. I think, again, regardless of the width, the impression I get from the design that I've seen is that the intent is to replace existing bicycle infrastructure and signage that exists on Beacon Street with this path. So I'm strongly not in favor of removing bicycle infrastructure, even if we're adding infrastructure that bicycles can use, especially under the auspices of a project that is ostensibly trying to encourage people to bicycle. I'd rather get rid of a lane of traffic in each direction instead of having a 2x2 highway through Brookline, through our most dense shopping and residential areas, and eliminate bike lanes. The second I have is that's mostly a comment, just throwing that out there. Maybe good to confirm that it is in fact the intent to remove the bike lanes before I get all riled up, but I'll pause there if there's a comment.
No, I think that's a question for the town.
Okay.
The feasibility study did remove the bike lanes. It's a narrow right away. So that was one of the concessions to make fit everything in. We are reevaluating. I don't know if there'll be much change we can make to keep both, but
we can get rid of the lane of cars.
We've done it before on Beacon Street. We could do it some more.
Yeah. It's a nice spot where we did it. It's great. Okay. Won't push too much on that. The other, in my consideration for shared mobility, I saw lots of mention of the MBTA stations, the train in particular. That's great. No mention of blue bike stations or bus stop locations that could be impacted by pinching at these high mix areas. So I really want to make sure we have bus stop locations circled, even though they're not technically in the feasibility area. And then blue bike stations, either considering moving them or adjusting their location so they're not creating desired crossings where it's not safe to access the path where those stations are.
Good.
Okay. Mark?
I'd like to know about the parking in your studies. are we losing any parking spaces or?
So we haven't begun the design process yet, right?
Okay.
Along the corridor?
Yeah.
I think the answer will be yes,
It-
but
it-
we will be more specific than that. We will look at literally every block and evaluate it as we go, for sure.
Because from a business point of view, the more spaces you lose, the more customers you lose.
Understood.
Some customers ride bikes though.
We love that.
Yeah.
Steve.
Thanks. How much do you expect the execution of the MBTA accessibility project, like not the plan, but the actual implementation, to affect plans? Because you mentioned before, it's kind of important to make major decisions early on. How much flux is there in that process later on? And will that cause any potential roadblocks or issues late in the process?
Nope,
Okay.
because we've been on it for the last 6 months.
Yeah, I'm seeing.
Right, so the town and ourselves have been, and our design team, we've been meeting with the MBTA, we have their plans. We've weighed in on things that, along the town are important to the bridle path, and its goals. And, we have those drawings and we feel very confident now. They've done a great job coordinating, with, both the town ourselves and, I think they will not
Yeah.
be any hindrance.
How long is the MBTA construction supposed to be taking?
Next year, we'll be able, they hope to do a little bit in the fall, the bulk will be spring. I think they fully expect to be done in 12 months from now.
But their
To the extent
design,
that they're ever done.
their design process is far along, so even though they haven't done the
Because
work,
they started.
they're, they've been reporting to the transportation board regularly, so we've gone sort of, 2 blocks at a time to see what design changes they've made, and there's always, consultation, with Tool in terms of making sure they're not making decisions that are gonna adversely impact the brand.
And my second question on that is, there's an obvious complaint or criticism one could launch, which is that it would make sense in a perfect world for these things to have happened in tandem. Obviously, we have no control of that in any capacity or when the MBTA decides to use their funding to execute this project. But how would you suggest, if somebody asked, reframing that in a positive light? Or what are the advantages of the fact that we get to do this afterwards or second?
I'll take a shot. If the T doesn't spend the money, Trump might take it away tomorrow.
Right, well, yeah, sure.
Like that, they have to move now because they have money in their pocket now and it's not.
Yeah,
until it's spent,
yeah,
it's gone.
I understand, but from a planning perspective, like what are the
You
advantages?
have a president who doesn't believe in planning.
Yeah.
So like, this is the way it is,
Yeah,
right? The T has to spend it now because
Yeah.
they're terrified the money's gonna evaporate.
yeah,
There will be a phase 2 eventually of the MBTA project, but that's so far over the horizon.
Several
I don't think we
presidential
should think
administrations later.
about coordinating.
yeah. Well, are there any improvements?
Sorry to
required on
interrupt.
that?
Can we go back to raising our hands and then I'll call on people to speak? Other questions?
Is there any are we monitoring,
Yeah,
phones and nobody?
the DRC members online, if you wanna, say anything, please raise your hand and you can unmute and talk. Then after the DRC members, we'll open up, more general for those public as well.
David, did you have a question?
As a member of the public, can I have a question?
Yeah.
I just had a question following up on talking about computer modeling. Are any like future models going to be based on the 2021 like initial conditions report? Just because I think that 2021 probably had very different traffic patterns than we see today, especially with one, a lot of telework back then, and two, a lot of the popularity of bicycling now. I'm just wondering whether the models that are created will be.
That's a great point, and that was one of the challenges of the feasibility study. It was done in the height of the COVID era, so there were some data limitations there, specifically for traffic. we collected a brand new set of traffic and operational data this year. All those stats that were on screen and the volumes more data behind those, everything is from 2025. So we'll be using that new data.
Other questions? Rachel?
So as part of the design, we'll be designing like traffic signals for like the existing intersections, like the car signals and the pedestrian signals. And that will also be redesigned, right? As the path is getting designed, where cars can make left turns, where they have arrows, all that kind of stuff.
Yes, and one of the advantages we have going into this project is because of the MBTA tracks, a lot of times cars have a left turn lane already, and they have a red light for those left turns to make sure they don't interfere with the trains. So we'll be able to sort of use that condition and add in a path and provide the crossing signals and the time to cross without conflicts.
But are we also able to like say we need to add like a left turn arrow for the cars at this spot to make like the coming off of the path safe, so that you're not competing with cars like that are waiting to turn left because they don't have currently an arrow.
Right.
Yes.
The traffic signals will be fully upgraded to account for all modes that are turning and crossing.
And we'll be looking at the unsignalized locations too, see if there's opportunities. Is there a particular one you're thinking about, or just in general?
Oh, I really think every time I cross Beacon Street and Washington Square, I almost get taken out by a car that's like trying to turn left there because they don't have a turn arrow.
Like Westport, Paris, that
Washington, like Beacon and Washington. So if I'm crossing Beacon, like in front of like Bar Taco, then every time those cars turning left, they're like honking, they're like speeding at me, they just want to make their left turn, and they don't like that I have a walk sign and that crosswalk. And so we don't want that kind of things happening with people like on the path and they're in their crosswalk. So as long as that's part of the process as well.
Yes. Any other questions?
I do see a couple more questions online. I will read these. Let's see. Current bicycle advisory committee member. I wonder whether nature safe routes for cyclists on the road we have to compete with cars, and then on the bridle path we'll have to yield pedestrians. It'd be nice for a dedicated route for cyclists in this plan. More of a comment than a question. I appreciate the comment. Thank you. This one looks like a question. How many bicycle parking spots / bike parking racks will be there, and can you comment on their locations along the path, please? So we will obviously, we will definitely be considering bicycle parking, both in terms of configuration and location. That's the work ahead of us. We have not determined where those facilities are going to go yet. I think there's several key things that factor into that. Is the framing that Kathleen mentioned. Where's the access points? What are the critical things we need to think about there? But also, how does it in fact interact with the other infrastructure we want out there? How does it interact with the experience people want? So there'll be a lot that goes into that, but the short answer is we don't know yet.
Thank you.
Okay. Are we done at 8-ish? Okay.
Are you taking comments from the general public?
Yep.
Yeah, my name is David Fell. I'm a resident on Beacon Street. I'm in this meeting mainly because I'm a cyclist and I do look forward to this amenity as a safe way to travel. I appreciate that. But I just want to use my 60 seconds just to speak up on behalf of the Green Line, the MBTA. I do hope that whatever transpires in this design, that we can be cognizant of the throughput speed of the trains, because what I'm witnessing as I look out my window, and I see them every day, I'm seeing drivers who are very anxious as they come to any kind of crossing. And I'm just anticipating that situation where bicyclists are crossing the tracks. I know, since I'm a bicyclist, that we're not all law-abiding citizens, that many of us do not obey traffic signals. And I'm very concerned about that situation and about the possibility that the green line might go even slower than it is today. So I just hope that the designers are cognizant of that and include that as a planning criteria.
Agreed. At peak time, the sea line above ground averages slower than 6 miles per hour.
John Harris, his hand raised.
Yeah, hi, thank you very much. My name is John Harris. I'm co-chair of Climate Action Brookline. I'm a board member of Biking Brookline. As a town meeting member, I was a petitioner of Brookline's 2 recent tree protection warrant articles. So I'm a cyclist, a pedestrian, an MBTA rider, a car driver, and a tree hugger. So like many folks in town, I have multiple interests in this project and very much looking forward to working with you all to find the optimum balance between them all. Good luck to everybody. First, a request that you zoom and record at least the first part, the meeting room part of the walk and talks, when you show the maps and the slides before you hit the street. And then finally, a question. In everything that's been said, it's been implied, but I haven't heard it said explicitly, that the T-tracks must remain where they are, not being moved at all, not even small sections, even though that creates huge diversions in the bridle path at a few spots. Is that true? Thank you.
Yes, is the short answer to that. That would be a tremendous change in scope and scale for this effort to move the tracks.
Thank you.
Is the number of travel lanes also a hard constraint for motor vehicles?
The number of travel lanes, yeah.
I think now that we have some solid traffic counts, when the feasibility study was done, we didn't have accurate traffic counts for COVID. So I think we could look at where that needs to change. The feasibility did have small sections that did go down to 1 lane. So we could look at opportunities to do that in more places. The competing interests, though, if we do change from signaling to be exclusive, that does take away more time that it would benefit if we had 2 lanes and help manage that traffic. So there's definitely pros and cons of both options.
I realize we're getting close to the end here. I did want to piggyback on something else John mentioned, specifically that the talking walks, and make sure the invitation to folks here was very explicit in those events. We would love for everyone to be out at those events. Come join the brief site walks, come interact with the stations that we've prepared. We really, got a lot of hope for these events. I think they're got a lot of great materials prepared. So want to see certainly folks turning out and make sure this group feels absolutely welcome and invited at all of those.
All right. Thank you all.
Yeah. Just do it that way. We can do it at the same breakfast. We can do it all day.